Provided the pipes can hang in there and there are no significant coughing fits, welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Vespris, your still ailing host as I try to get over the real-life flu. I didn't even, honestly, I haven't had the flu in so long, I started to not believe that it was really a thing. Because we all talk about, oh, it feels like I've got the flu. It feels like a bad cold. Flu-like symptoms. That's a big NBA one. Non-COVID illness. I had legit flu A, and that joint sucks, people. Man, if you haven't had that, I don't try to avoid it if at all possible. But who cares? I shaved my face, much to, I'm sure, the YouTube viewers' delight. So you got to like and subscribe because of that, right? So because my personal hygiene took a step in the right direction. And because hopefully you guys are going to enjoy the buy low names that we've got for you on today's show. Find me on social media at Dan Vespris, DanBesbris, Dan Vespris. Old Man Squad over on Blue Sky, which is blowing up over the last day and a half. I guess it's weird, man. I've tried to detach myself from the political side of all of this, but I'm fairly certain that one social media grows whenever the guy who owns the other one does something kind of dumb, and that seems to be happening right now. So if you're one of the folks that's making a migration, I'm going to try to post things at both spots. I want to try to appease all of the followers because a lot of you guys don't choose your social media based on the guy who owns it. Some of you choose it based on the stuff you can find there. And right now, Twitter's still faster. But a lot of you are on Blue Sky, so I'm on both for your benefit. That's all I'm trying to do here. Dan Vespris on Twitter, Old Man Squad on Blue Sky, Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. I hope that made sense. Trying my best not to offend anybody. And now we begin. It's buy low time. It's week 14 buy low time. Damn, we're far into this stinking season. Quickly, thought process, of course, of the week: has the public lost trust in anyone that perhaps we can still snag? Are some of these guys just plain bad? Stupid opener. Anyway, here's a couple of the recent episodes. Last week, we had Donovan Mitchell, who's put up a couple of good ball games. OG Anunoby, who's put up a couple of good ones. Mikal Bridges, who hasn't yet. And then Bradley Beal was the crazy one for crazies only, which, again, it's not so much about what he's going to do in his bench role in Phoenix. It's more on Beal, where you think he might end up post-trade deadline. So you're trying to basically treat him like a stash almost, and then see what happens 2 weeks from now. The previous week, we had James Harden on. He tends to be better when Kawhi Leonard is around. We just need Kawhi to be in more of the ball games. Jalen Williams continues to stink. That's a weird one. Rudy Gobert has not gotten it going. Brooke Lopez did. And then Jimmy Butler was the if you're a maniac choice, which, again, by the way, I'll double down on that one right now. Jimmy Butler is an absolute clown right now, which is fantastic for distressing an asset. Ain't nobody want anything to do with that guy, but the Heat have to get off of him. So you got a pretty good idea that Butler's going someplace, and when he does, he's going to go back to being Jimmy Butler. Anyway, that's the stuff we've had going on this show over the last couple of weeks. Jalen Johnson is the first name we're going to talk about on today's show. He just came back from his shoulder injury, and he hasn't looked quite right. And I think the combination of factors there may be scaring fantasy managers just a little bit. Over the last 2 weeks, he's number 201. I think he's actually only played it was like the last 8 or 9 days he's been back, if that. His projection still is inside the top 20. And I think his price tag right now is you could probably get Jalen Johnson for someone near 30. I don't know this to be true, but I do know that because of his shoulder thing and a bunch of missed ball games and some bad ones upon return, he's fallen to number 22. He was at the edge of the first round before all this crap went down. So now you look at guys like, I don't know, Jalen Williams, the other Jalen. If he wasn't going the wrong direction, that would have been an interesting one. Darius Garland at 34, Anthony Edwards at 35. These are guys where I know you're going to, a lot of you are going to kill me for that. I'd rather have Jalen Johnson over Anthony Edwards. I know I'm giving up 7 points, but Johnson's pretty much winning every other cat. I mean, okay, he's not going to beat him in 3-pointers, but big edge in rebounds. He's beating him in assists. He's beating him in steals. He's beating him in blocks. He's beating him in field goal percent. He's beating him in turnovers. And Anthony Edwards has the edge in free throw percent. But like start to finish this year, front to back right now, Jalen Johnson has been the better 9-category fantasy player. Not points league, 9-cat. 8-cat, he's beaten him too. It's closer, but he's still beating him. And that's just the power of the math. The math is hard at work. And it's not because of percentages, really, because Anthony Edwards is good at one and bad at the other, and Jalen Johnson is kind of the same story there. It's just the advantage that Edwards has on him in scoring and threes is not as significant as the massive rebounding and defensive stat and very small assist edge that Jalen Johnson puts back. So think about guys in that range. Trade up for Jalen Johnson. I personally believe that he's going to get his mojo back in the next, I don't know, might be tomorrow, but the thing with these buy lows is that sometimes it does take a game or 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever. So if you pull off a buy low, don't lose your mind if it doesn't work on day one. You've got to make sure that you bide your time, take deep breaths, understand that this is an investment, and sometimes you have to wait for an investment to mature. Yeah, I said it that way. Drives me crazy even when I say it. Mature. Anyway, point is here, there are names that'll get it done. Now, the other side of this is, of course, whoever has Jalen Johnson has loved him since day one. Such as us. If you guys have been following this show since the preseason, since fantasy draft time, you know how incredibly high I was on Jalen Johnson this year. I have him in quite a few places, as I'm guessing you guys do as well, because many of you watched and followed this show during draft season. He was in there. He was bucket 10, basically right behind the Dame Kyrie group. It was Jalen Johnson, Jalen Williams, De'Aaron Fox, and then I had Jalen Brunson in there. Should have bumped him down more. But here's the beauty of the buckets was that he never fell that far anyway. So I have no Jalen Brunsons. And you guys remember, I was down on Brunson this year because he had help. He's been perfectly good in fantasy, but he hasn't been that top 20 guy. These were, De'Aaron Fox was like, these were names that were expected to be. How many names was that? Did they get to this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 21. This is like right around 25. So pretty high up the board. Meaning that whoever you're trying to pry him off of, I didn't mean to get too sidetracked there, is going to be very attached to him as somebody that they were expecting to be a top 25 guy. So you can't really try to squeeze him and give up like a Jared Allen. It's going to have to be somebody that has some serious name power. It's going to have to be someone like an Anthony Edwards, who we just talked about. Or if you don't think James Harden gets all the way back to first round, or Jalen Williams, who we just talked about, or if you don't think Donovan Mitchell climbs the board. I don't think I want to make that move. Some of those guys I would. Maybe De'Aaron Fox, who we just talked about. I think I'd probably rather have Jalen Johnson, but also maybe I'm a lunatic. Maybe everybody else wants the extra scoring. Maybe scoring is more important to all of you than I'm realizing. In any event, that's the first name on the list. The next name on the list is our friends at BetOnline, because they continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan of betting or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. They've got the largest selection of odds. That includes football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, Mo, other, D, all of the above. And so BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for this new year. Touchdowns, three-pointers, and hat tricks. BetOnline is you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline. The game starts here. Next name on our board is Derrick White. What's funny is I've been talking about him on shows as a possible buy low, but he never made it onto a buy low show. And I feel like it just had to do with timing not working out all that well, in that last week We did our buy low show. I think I recorded it on a Monday night and it dropped on Tuesday morning. And then like a day after that, I started talking about Derrick White on a bunch of different episodes. But he never made it officially onto a buy low show until right now. He's number 166 over the last 2 weeks, and he's just not really all that involved in what the Celtics are doing. It's weird. He's only taking 10 shots, and he's missing most of all of them, 31.5%. And I do think that there's a confidence factor going in where he's cold, and so he's just like, screw this. They didn't bring me in here to take 12, 13, 14 shots if I'm not making them. And so it becomes a little bit of a negative feedback loop. And that's a thing that happens to anybody who's not the number one or number two scorer on a team. Typically, the number one and number two guys, they're just going to take their shots no matter whether they're going in or not, because they know that's their job. Derrick White's job with the Celtics was never to score. When he's scoring, he's going to keep doing it. And so up until the last 2 to 3 weeks, he's been shooting about 45% from the field on about 13 shots per game, which is, for the most part, repeatable. Free throws a little lower this year than I would have expected, but the steals, the blocks, the boards, the assists, the threes, all that stuff is right where we need it to be. And when he warms back up and goes on a 50+% shooting barrage, he'll probably start taking 12 or 13 shots a game again instead of 10. It's like, all right, they're going in. Good for me. Here we go. We should treat him as such. He's frustrating when he's cold because, like we just talked about, he's not a guy who's being relied upon to score. So when things go quiet, they go double quiet. This is the magic of the Roto 9-Cat guy, is that if you're not getting superstar level usage, your ugly games tend to stick out. Because now you're talking about, 9 points, 3 boards, and 3 assists. And this is a guy where you're like, what? I was told this guy's a third rounder. He's not lately, as evidenced by that 166 mark we just talked about. But Derrick White, like all of last year and then all of this year until the last 2 to 3 weeks, he's been that guy. You could argue Peyton Pritchard has stolen some of his juice. The Kristaps Porzingis early return stole a little bit of his juice. That's fleeting. These guys are going to miss games. Kristaps is going to miss games. Drew Holiday is going to miss games. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are going to get days off, injured or not, because the Celtics have a postseason to think about. And so there's always just going to be a little bit of extra. But it's going to come down to whether or not Derrick White actually wants to be taking any of that extra. And lately, because he's missing all this stuff, he doesn't want to. I think he'll climb back inside the top 35. He's fallen to number 41 in this pretty deep slump he's in right now. And I think because it's such a quiet slump, not quiet in that folks aren't aware of it, quiet in that what he's doing on the court is extremely quiet. Couple of points, couple of rebounds, couple of assists. He'll still get his steal and his block. It's very quiet. So it feels worse. So the guys to look at to see if you can get Derrick White are the guys ranked in the 50s. I don't even think, I'm like, you could go to some of the guys in the 40s, like a Cam Johnson or a Norman Powell. Might get it done. Or a Jared Allen who's ranked right next to him. Or even a Jamal Murray. But I don't know that you need to go that high. I think you could go Pascal Siakam at 52. I think you could go Miles Turner at 53. You could go DeMar DeRozan at 57. That's interesting. I might do that. Paul George at 60. Probably wouldn't get it done. Those are some names I think you could use to try to get yourself Derrick White. And he is probably the strongest wreck of the week because he fits all of the mold, all of the buy low criteria. Playing poorly, check. Quiet stat lines, check. Not percentages are a factor in the low rank, but they're not the only factor. Check. Had expectations set extraordinarily high. Check. Slight fear that it doesn't happen, doesn't come back. Check. You can go get your guy. Third one, and I struggled a lot with this choice, is Bam Adebayo, because I don't know if it's a buy low enough. Bam is number 168 over the last week, but this is a season-long issue. He's number 69 in 9-cat because his field goal percent's at 45.5 and his free throw percent is at 72. It just all around, it's been a bad year for him. And now it seems like Khalil Ware is going to give him a run for his money for some of the big man stats out there. Not that it's going to take his playing time away, but somebody else that can go rebound and block some shots. Does that push Bam away from the bucket a little bit? So I have many, many reasons to be concerned about Bam Adebayo. But I also think that with as bad as he's been lately, there is probably a little itty-bitty window to buy low on him. He is the softest of the buy low Rex on today's show. Because he's number 70, basically, at this point on the season. I think he could climb about 10 slots higher than that. But it might get worse before it gets better, depending on how all of this Jimmy Butler and Khalil Ware, those are two kind of unrelated thoughts, but they're both happening to the Heat at the same time, depending on how that stuff sorts itself out. So, Bam, this is one I don't want you to lose a bunch of sleep over, but if you can look at somebody in that 75 to 90 range that maybe has a little bit of a scoring tilt to their game, you might be able to squeeze Bam Adebayo out of them. Like Austin Reeves might be enough because he's been scoring and passing a bunch lately. Miles Bridges has been on the rise. That might be enough to get it done. I don't think DeAndre Ayton gets it done. I don't think Mikal Bridges gets it done. Pretty sure Tobias Harris doesn't get it done. Maybe a red-hot Jalen Green. That's an interesting one. Whoever has Bam Adebayo, I promise you, they're more annoyed with him than you think they are. Because they've been watching this crap all season. We, the rest of us, I have actually 0 Bam Adebayos on any of my teams in any format this year because I thought he was going too early. But I didn't think it was going to be this bad. It's one of those ones where I got it right, but I didn't get it all the way right. I give myself like 2/3 credit. But we are at a point now where I think we could probably go get him because somebody went out, drafted this dude in the, whatever it is, mid-40s, early 40s, and he's at 70. And he's just kind of been like, meh. All year. The field goal percent's been low. He went through some stretches where the steals were good and the scoring and the rebounding was a little bit better. But overall, he just has not had a good year. And so I am concerned that it doesn't actually get better. But the beauty is right now, I think you could have him for guys ranked slightly lower than him or guys that are on a heater that are just so slightly above, like a Malik Monk. Chris Paul is an interesting one. I don't know if that gets it done. I'm not going any higher than that, other than someone like Atari Eason, but I don't think that would be enough. But look at all those names underneath to try out, just to see what happens. Lots of names to try out. Not Bradley Beal. Remember, he's on our loony bin, do you want to take a big swing board? Okay, and now our it's not even a crazy one, but our risky play, our risky buy low of the day is the injury buy low, and that's Luka Doncic. And I know what you're thinking, Dan, Luka Doncic is not risky. I think it's risky because a lot of you have playoffs that start like right after the All-Star break. If you wiped out the final 3 or 4 weeks of the season, and then the 3 weeks before that push right up after the All-Star break. So if Luka's not ready, you're about to give up somebody of extraordinary value and not have anything at the start of your playoffs. So that's a pretty big risk. But all the sort of tea leaves, rumors, whatever you want to call it, that's floating around on Doncic right now suggests that he's trying to be back before the All-Star break, which I think is, 4 weeks from now? I believe it's 4 weeks from now. That's a pretty good bit of wiggle room when you think about it. Like, could he come back in 2.5 weeks, have a little bit of time to ramp up slowly, and then get some more time off for the break? I think it would take a top 25 guy to get Luka. I feel pretty confident in that assessment. Like, it's going to take someone at Donovan Mitchell perceived value or higher. Donovan Mitchell, LeBron, De'Aaron Fox, Mobley, JJJ, and on up the board to do it. I don't know how much higher I would go than that. I mean, obviously Trey Murphy you would give up for Luka Doncic, but that's probably not going to get it done. Guys like Tyrese Maxey, Kevin Durant, Halliburton, you're almost giving up too much to squat on Luka. But it's a choice, you know. If you can get Doncic for, I don't know, like De'Aaron Fox is probably the best example. I think you probably do it. You know, you turn a third rounder into a first rounder, and you just close your eyes and cross your fingers that Luka's back in the next 3 weeks. It's ballsy. It's crazy. It's much easier to do in Roto. But if you can pull it off in head-to-head and it works, it's the kind of trade that could really change your team. I would not suggest doing it if you have a great team already. If you're already cruising, just cruise. Don't flip the thing. Don't shake the snow globe if your team is already dominating. But if you're like 4th place, you're playing in kind of a dead heat with almost everybody else in the league. The team at the very top tends to beat you. The teams at the bottom, you'd pick on them, and then everybody else is a coin flip. That's the kind of trade you probably think about doing. It's like, look, I'm not gonna win this league unless I get incredibly, incredibly lucky. My opponents all get hurt at the same time, and I just have this, world's easiest path through the fantasy playoffs. Or take a swing. Probably good enough to still make the playoffs, even if you give up your third rounder and get zeros for a few weeks. But that's my thought. I think Luka's the wild and woolly one this week, and I would probably consider it. Again, a quick recap on some of the names we just went through. Jalen Johnson, see if you can get him for someone in the 30 to 40 range. Derrick White, see if you can get him for someone near 50. Bam Adebayo, see if you can get him for someone outside the top 75 or 80. And Luka Doncic, if your team is in that right pocket, see if you can get him for someone around 25. And then the updates on previous names. Donovan Mitchell, that one's pretty much cashed in. He's not all the way back where we'd want him to be, but he's played well lately. Anunoby had a pretty good week. Mikal Bridges is still a little bit of a buy low. Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, both this trade situation, those guys are buy lows. I keep buying low on Jalen Williams. It's going to happen at some point here. And then James Harden, it's kind of an in-between. He had a couple of good ones and then a couple of bad ones. I do think that's going to level off once Kawhi Leonard is back on, if we can call it a more consistent basis. Friends, please put a like, not just on this video, but on our trade deadline live show that I'm going to be hosting with Adam King. That's coming up in just a little over 2 weeks. Holy crap. Also, we're going to be starting a stash series. Ooh, oh yes, this will be fun. With analysts from across the fantasy space, their favorite trade deadline stash targets, things that they're watching for as we approach the trade deadline. I think you guys are going to get a real kick out of that. And we'll try to keep track of some of the names, because if they hit, I want to make sure that we give some credit with, of course, the caveat, you can't use half your roster to stash. You're going to have to pick your 1 or 2 favorites, and then you're going to watch our live show, so you know what to do in real time. Thanks for watching again, everybody. I am at Dan Besbris on the Twitter, DanBesbris. Old Man Squad on Blue Sky, Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. Like, rate if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify. Subscribe no matter where you're taking in this weird content that we've turned into a lifestyle. Fantasy basketball forever. And shout out to our buddies at Underdog Fantasy, as I've talked about on our next show now. This is the big teaser, I guess, if you want to call it that. On our very next show, we're going to be going through building a card with you guys. It's going to be so much fun. For now, make sure you use promo code OLDMAN, OLDMAN, or click the Underdog link in the show description to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash on your first deposit. That's a 50% deposit match bonus. So you could go up to as much as $2,000 and still get a maxed out bonus. And a gimme pick of the day. You get that freebie. As you saw on the screen, you can see on YouTube right now and on our last show, Jason Tatum scoring 1 point was the freebie pick of the hell day was that? Wednesday? Yeah, that's the freebie pick of Tuesday? No. What day is it? Yes, this show is being recorded on Wednesday and dropped first thing on Thursday morning. So Jason Tatum was the freebie pick on Wednesday. There will be a different one on Thursday. It's just a great way to start your card. And then you don't get this every single time. You get this one time, but then you basically get to pair that up with any other one pick, and you can basically 3x your cash. It's a fantastic way to start. I know that this sounds nuts, but when you sign up, again, with promo code OLDMAN, and you use that freebie pick, that's kind of when you should max out. I know it's horrifying advice because you want to try to stretch your buy-in, but you should do whatever they'll let you do. I think it's either 10 or 15 bucks because that's the best odds you're going to get. They're 3xing your initial amount, and you only have to get one of the two things right because the other one's a freebie. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys play craps out there. Taking odds in craps is the one time in all of Vegas where they give the better even odds with the house. And so you want to get as much money as you can on that because that's the best time to win. That's what this is. You're getting better than even odds, so max it out. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Again, promo code OLDMAN. I can't wait to try along with you guys. And tomorrow is going to be that day. Or maybe I should say the Wednesday recap show on Thursday morning. That's going to be the show because we're going to use information from Brenton's DFS show. Let's wrap this up. Thanks for watching again, everybody. I'm Dan for Old Man Squad. Thank you, Underdog. Thank you, Bet Online. We'll see you guys soon.